President Trump is set to visit Corpus Christi later this week. The Inner Harbor desalination plant is expected to be a talking point in Corpus Christi City Council meeting, and Hill Pier is finally reopened after years of reconstruction. This is South Texas Midday. I'm Rob Boskamp. Thank you for joining me on this Tuesday, February 24th. President Donald Trump is expected to make a stop in Corpus Christi this week. The White House reports that Trump will travel to the city this Friday afternoon, the last day of early voting ahead of the March 3rd primaries. Trump has thrown his support behind several Republican congressional candidates in Texas, but has not made an endorsement in the GOP U.S. Senate race between John Cornyn and Ken Paxton. Corpus Christi City Council meets today at City Hall. The big item on this week's agenda, review of a design-build contract for the nearly $1 billion Inner Harbor desalination plant. Last week, the city announced the proposed desal plant received a 25% lower price tag when compared to its previous $1.3 billion cost. Full meeting agenda can be found on the City of Corpus Christi's website. The city of Pharr secured about $3.5 million in federal funding to modernize operations at the Pharr-Reynosa International Bridge. The Rio Grande Valley Business Journal reports that U.S. Representative Monica de la Cruz, Republican McAllen, secured funding through the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2026. The bridge receives $47 billion in annual trade. The funds will support the Bridge Operations and Logistics Transformation Project, which are infrastructure upgrades set to improve traffic flow, public safety, and inspection efficiency. The Rio Grande Valley Business Journal is in partnership with KEDT. Hill Pier officially reopened today with a ribbon-cutting ceremony. The pier was under reconstruction for several years after storm damage from 2017's Hurricane Harvey, then again in 2020 from Hurricane Hannah. Nueces County Precinct 4 Commissioner Brent Chesney announced the visits to the pier within the first 90 days after its reopening will be free for the public. Early voting is underway in Texas ahead of the March 3rd primary election. Historically, voter participation in Texas's party primaries has been low, but so far turnout has been exceeding expectations, especially when it comes to Democrats. As the Texas Newsroom's Lucio Vasquez reports, state voting data shows a sharp increase in Democratic involvement compared to other recent election cycles.
More than 500,000 Texas Democrats have already cast their ballots. That's more than double the number of Democrats who turned out by this point in 2022. It's also far higher than during the presidential primary in 2024, when about 250,000 Democrats had voted early by this time.
There is an enduring question for Democrats about whether or not they can take Texas.
Brandon Rottinghouse is a political science professor at the University of Houston. He says this year, several factors are at play.
So you've got Democrats reacting to national Republican leadership, criticism of federal and state policies, and concern about Democratic norms. All these things are motivating Democrats to come vote.
Primary voters are choosing their party's nominees for November. That includes statewide offices like Texas governor, lieutenant governor, and attorney general. But Rottinghouse says the big ticket item on this year's ballot is the race for U.S. Senate.
When you've got competitive races, people will come to vote.
And both U.S. Senate primaries are competitive. Vying for the Democratic nomination are Dallas area Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett and State Representative James Tallarico of Austin. On the Republican side, incumbent Senator John Cornyn is facing the most serious primary challenge of his career from Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton.
It's created a lot of buzz online. It's created a lot of debate and controversy about who the better candidate is. All of those things are driving this race's competitiveness.
Speaking of Republicans, about 500,000 have cast early ballots so far this year, slightly above 2022 levels, but below the 2024 presidential primary race. In total, more than 1 million Texans have already voted, roughly 5% of the state's registered voters. Early voting runs through this Friday, the 27th. Election Day is March 3rd. I'm Lucio Vasquez in Houston.
The U.S. Food and Drug Administration has issued emergency use authorizations for drugs to treat New World screwworm in pets. Texas Public Radio's Maria Navarro has the details.
NexGard and NexGard Combo are frequently prescribed chewable tablets used to prevent fleas, ticks, and heartworm. They can now be used to treat New World screwworm. The harmful parasite has yet to be detected in the U.S., but has been moving closer to the Texas-Mexico border. The FDA says pets near the border and pets that have traveled to countries with active cases are more likely to be exposed to the screwworm. The FDA previously issued an emergency use authorization for the drug Credelio to treat screwworm in cats and dogs. It also conditionally approved a similar drug, Credelio Quattro. I'm Mariana Navarro in San Antonio.
A new study reveals that college preparation classes aren't fully setting up students for success. KEDT's Joe Smikle has more details.
A recently released study called The Uneven Promise of Readiness is outlining that college prep courses tend to offer a false signal of preparedness for college students in Texas. Researchers from 4 Texas universities tracked nearly 1 million high school students to see how they fared after high school, including how much they earned and whether they were enrolled in college and completed their degree. The study is suggesting that some schools count students as ready for college don't equally set them up for success after graduation. The Texas Education Agency has been strict with school districts on college readiness, with schools now needing to get 88% of graduates ready for life after high school, which is up from 60% in previous years. For KEDT News, I'm Joe Smikle.
And later this hour, following South Texas Midday, the Rio Grande Valley Business Journal's Kristen Mosbrucker-Garza stopped by to chat with Spencer Cihak about economic activity in the region. Here's a preview.
There was a little bit of hope in the sense that because Mexico, our biggest trading partner along the border, is part of essentially NAFTA 2.0. It's called the USMCA, but it's essentially a free trade agreement. So a lot of people were worried that trade between the U.S. and Mexico would go down, but U.S. imports increased by about 5% nationwide, which I think surprised a lot of people. But I get the sense that perhaps that was because there was sort of a lot of uncertainty about like when stuff would go into effect. There would be like the threat of a tariff, and then it wouldn't really actually be implemented. I kind of got the sense that that was part of it. Also, I think a lot of companies, because of the initial threats, kind of like front loaded their business decisions like in the first half of the year. So, in that second quarter is what the Dallas Fed had shared, it actually went up. And part of that could be because companies are nearshoring, right? They're sort of realigning their supply chains to take advantage of some of the free trade agreements that are in place. But overall, world trade is down. Imports are down about 2.8%.
You can hear more from that interview later this hour. And that is the latest news and information on South Texas Midday. I'm Rob Boskamp. Your community arts calendar and more is on the way.